All right. I think I'm live. Woo! Hey, astronauts! Welcome to the live. Before I get started and just start running my gab, let me actually check that you can hear me, see me, that there are no weird connections. I always got to check, you know. Never forget to check. All right. Okay. There are a lot of commercials here, and I was not expecting that. All right. Love to hear it. I am live. I am well, and I hope you astronauts are well too. Today, we are talking about Pluto transiting Shravana. I know it's very exciting. This powerhouse transit is highly transformational, once in a lifetime. We are the first in our generations to see such a transit. And, obviously it won't happen again for another 250 years. So no one else will experience this but us here and now, or in those who get born in between this time period. So, hello, my name is Brandi. I am a astrology researcher as well as a tarot reader with over 15, 16 plus years of experience when it comes to reading the stars. So before we get started, I do want you to know that if you would like a private reading from me, link can be found in the description bar below. If you have any questions, I'm going to have some pause points. So feel free to ask questions in that time period. You're always welcome to comment, to participate, to like, to share, and I would really greatly appreciate it if you did so. I don't want to just be here by myself. I know lots of you astronauts like the astrology videos, or at least, a small portion of you like the videos. So I'm obviously here to, enjoy each other's company. I'll say that. So let's just hop right into it. So Pluto, the planet of wealth transformation, deep perception, emotional intensity, and great upheaval, is transiting Shravana from February 17th, 2026 to July 29th, 2026. And hey, Ramona, hey, I hope you're doing well. It is at this point, Pluto will move back into Uttara Ashadha until December 28, 2026. This is when it finally returns into Shravana and remains there until January 31st to February 1st, depending on your time zone. And it will stay there until 2035, okay? We will be under energies of Pluto and Shravana for the next 9 years. Powerful stuff, guys. Next 9 years, Pluto and Shravana's transit. We're already currently under the influence. As you see, this transit started that February 17th period and will not end until January 31st, February 1st, 2035, right? So just wanted to let you know that. Hopefully that was clear. Pluto has been in the explosive Uttara Ashadha since 2018, an era marked by the global pandemic, technological disruption, social and political divisiveness, and escalating economic disparity. By midsummer to early winter, this period is a last goodbye for those in our lifetime, where we will wrap up unfinished business from the past 8 years, completing the death of the old social contract, and the cries and demands of accountability will reach its conclusion, and we will be left carrying its echo. Symbolized by the ear, Shravana is the nakshatra of listening, understanding multiple languages, attuned intuition, observation, and investigation. It is connected to technological innovation, foreign lands, alienation, self-sacrifice, discipline, having faith, mental strength, the feeling of high pressure situations, and releasing control. This double aftershock and investigative nature of both Pluto and Shravana will reveal what is unseen. Expect major upheavals in the house that it is placed in your chart. And remember, guys, we are doing Vedic astrology, sidereal astrology here. This is not Western. You'll need to look at your Vedic chart to see where it is transiting in your house. So keep that in mind. As I said in my deep dive video years ago on Jupiter transiting Shravana, this nakshatra represents the lasting impression in people's minds, correlating to another one of its symbols, the 3 footprints. Also representing following our destiny. And if you saw my old Pluto and Shravana video, then you know I talked about how a lot of people who had Shravana placements sort of had their destinies told to them. And it wasn't just Shravana placements, several moon placements underwent this, especially Rohini and Shravana the most, but you know, they'd often have their destinies told them either by a family member or a psychic or somebody saying, hey, follow these footsteps, go this path, this is for you, right? This combination of these two energies is likely to bring a powerful historical defining event that will be discussed for centuries to come. Major hidden truths will come to light. The deity of Shravana, Lord Vishnu, the preserver and protector of the universe, he restores balance to chaos and brings morality in the face of injustice. As always, when we cover this history, we will cover your history, we will cover your signs, we will cover the predictions. This is Vedic sidereal astrology. Once again, you can look at this from the perspective of your sun, moon, or ascendant when we get to your sign. However, I recommend viewing things from your ascendant. It is the most accurately reflects, I guess, reality, which is unfolding in your life and the events that you are actively experiencing. If you would like a private reading by me, feel free to book through my Etsy shop or booking form below. And if you're booking through my Etsy shop, I would 100% love if you could leave some reviews, okay? Or, you know, you can ask questions right here and now during the lives, though I will obviously give some space to do so. As always, if you're going to ask a specific question about your own birth chart, etc., then, you know, it is $5 for yes or no, $10 for in-depth. However, if you're just asking a general question about the things that we're talking about here today, I'm not, you know, charging for that. Ultimately, my goal is to educate you wonderful astronauts. So that hopefully you enjoy this, I guess, I don't know what to call it, program, video, whatever. I feel like it's a program because I always have a script beforehand, so I'm very structured and organized because I don't want to miss any of the information. And also sometimes I can blap on and just kind of go on a tangent, and I need to be streamlined, I need to be focused, I need to be clear. So I just want to let you also know that schedule lives will take place Thursday, Friday at 9 p.m. and Saturday at 12 p.m. Please turn on the notifications and check the community tab for weekly updates for when I will be live. And if you would like access to exclusive content and one free question a month for now, please become a member and join the Stargazers. I would love to see you there. We just uploaded the spring 2026 predictions for what is going to be unfolding for you. So feel free to become a Stargazer, and we won't waste any more time. We're going to hop into it. So let me get a little sip of this water here. My voice is like cracking. Let us hop into it, guys. All right. So the last time Pluto transited Shravana was February 20th, 1778 to February 2nd, 1787. And I also want to say that it kind of like around September 13th, 1787, you know, that's when it officially left, but it kind of dipped out in February 2nd, 1787. But then it officially left in December 9th, 1787. If that makes sense, right? So Pluto is in Shravana from February 20th, 1778 to February 2nd, 1787. And then it dips out. It goes into Dhanishta, comes back into Shravana from September to December, then back into Dhanishta. So 2 years after the foundation of America, that is when this transit takes place. This period was encapsulated by experimental new political systems, I guess the creation of the Constitution being tested, and deep inequalities of slavery, political, and voting rights. There was concentrated wealth and power, unstable economies, disputes over land control between indigenous populations and colonizers, along with the American colonies and the British crown. Lastly, the global attempt at centralization of power by leaders. Though there were few legal victories at this time when it came to enslaved people, slavery remained widely normalized during this period. So as you can see, the previous time Pluto was in Shravana, it was a lot of instability going on at the time. You know, this was right back smack dab in the American Revolution. The height of slavery was going on as well. You had a lot of injustices going on, especially when it came to taxes, human rights violations, and as well as some restrictions when it came to governments, and how they ran their people. So it's a very much like a power struggle period, which I think aligns a lot with Shravana's field from what I have seen. As I said before in like a little clip that I made about Pluto and Shravana before I made this video, I said, hey, this is kind of like faith through hard times energy going on here with Shravana, especially with Pluto there. So I want you guys to keep that in mind as we move through this video. Now on to the topic of slavery. As I mentioned before, this last transit occurred during the peak transatlantic slave trade from 1778 to 1787, that period. Granted, there's a little bit more branches into the peak, but you know, this was a peak period. The immense profits generated from the forced labor of enslaved people helped to fuel capital accumulation in emerging financial centers on both sides of the Atlantic. Wealthy plantation owners and merchants deposited gold, silver, and proceeds from slavery produced commodities such as sugar, tobacco, cotton, and other export crops into financial institutions, emerging in both Europe and the United States. Right, so you have these people who are highly involved in slavery, and they're taking the money either that they've gained indirectly from slavery or directly from slavery and pouring it into new financial institutions that were being created in the US and the United States. Hopefully that's clear. Banks and insurance firms provided credit loans and financial services that enabled the purchase of land, enslaved people, and commercial ventures tied to the export of these goods, effectively providing support to the broader slave economy. Isn't that crazy? You could take out a loan for a slave. That's actually nuts when you think about it. Or banks would kind of facilitate the auction of slaves as well. They wouldn't necessarily like sell the slaves themselves, but they would facilitate the auctioning of enslaved people because slaves were technically property. So what happened was, you know how you can put out a, how do you call it? When you borrow against something, you can borrow against like a house, right? If you say, hey, I want to borrow against this house, take out some money and buy something else, right? You could do that with actually enslaved people too at this time. You can borrow against a slave if you couldn't repay your debts, or maybe you failed to make interest payments. They could take your enslaved person, set up an auction, and sell the slave, and then, you know, obviously reap their profits back. So crazy. You never really think about these things, but it's really important to know our history. So that's something that was going on at this time. Instead of keeping this wealth idle in private chests, these owners actually purchase shares in newly chartered banks, receiving certificates, and function more so like a modern stock market, okay, or like a modern stock. So the certificate would function like a stock, like I own a little piece of something, and that's sort of the process that this was going to. This is why I say this kind of was started building the financial economy and the backbones of that during this time period. So financial institutions such as the Bank of North America, which chartered in 1781, and the Bank of Ireland, chartered in 1783, and the Bank of New York, which chartered in 1784, became venues for pooling this capital, which they then lent at interest to merchants, plantation owners, and governments, including financing plantation expansion, crop commerce, and the buying and selling of enslaved people as economic assets. These individuals were entitled to shares of banks' profits, often paid out periodically like dividends, similar to how investors receive returns at the end of the year today. So, you know, they are taking their money, they are buying shares in ownership of certain financial ventures, and the bank would pay them out, you know, not quarterly like now or, you know, anything like that, but maybe at the end of the year, you know, part of their cycle. So the landowners and different merchants were gaining more money and capital from slavery. And you can see how this is setting the backbone for a lot of financial institutions today, if I didn't already say that. Under the law at this time, enslaved people were treated as property in practical terms. That meant they could be pledged to the bank. This is what I was talking about before, guys. The same way livestock could, used as collateral to secure loans, are handed over to settle unpaid debts. For many plantation owners, this property generating public venue and the transactions involved in the sale of enslaved people were subject to fees or taxes similar to like a sales tax on a stock. So if you are not familiar with investing, if you own a stock and you gain something, you gain money from that stock, you sell it, that's like a capital gains tax. So you would get taxed by the government a certain amount for the amount of money that you have gained on that. And similar to how they were taxed for taxed for capital gains today, slaves were being taxed as they were sold. Like, okay, you sold this slave, you have to pay this much in tax for that. Horrific history. I mean, it's very upsetting. As the buying and the selling of bank shares grew increasingly common among brokers and investors, informal securities tradings expanded, contributing to the environment that led to the formal establishment of the New York Stock Exchange in 1792 with the signing of the Buttonwood Agreement as early effort to organize and regulate security trading. So now you can see what I'm talking about, how part of this security trading was a result of slavery, which led to the creation of Wall Street. And there's a lot of different things that led to the creation of Wall Street too. Actually, I know even certain, what do I call it, goods from India also helped and led to the creation of Wall Street as well. But that's a story for another day. I don't want to get into every aspect of history. So the transition embedded capital derived from plantation economies and slave-linked commerce into structured banking and financial markets, shaping the development of the global financial system. All right, it's a lot to take in, guys. So here you can see how slavery set the backbone or the baseline for the global financial system that we use today. You have bankers, merchants, investors, maybe people who are rich and have money, putting their money into banks, getting certain dividends out at the end of the year. You have them trading certain, I guess you'll say, products or property, which part of that is enslaved people, and getting taxed for this way, and moving things like security exchanges and things like that. You also have people who are taking their profit that they've earned from the enslavement of people, and they are using it to build more wealth by buying these shares through these banks and brokers, ultimately leading to the establishment of the New York Stock Exchange. Hopefully that makes a lot of sense here. I hope, I don't know a better way that I can explain it. You have these loans. It's a nightmare. It's just a really nightmarish situation that we are dealing with here. The wealthy people doing the buying and the selling of shares. Also, if you think about at this time period, and the fact that we have this building of financial systems, it really does speak to the nature of Capricorn. So Pluto does, Shravana does take place in the placement of Capricorn. And Capricorn, like all earth signs, are connected to financial systems. And we don't think about Capricorn as much when we think about finances, but we should, especially when it comes to large systems or large corporations or even governments. So if you think about a system that is connected to millions, hundreds of thousands, whatever, billions of people, that's going to have a Capricorn type of element to it. And more than likely, we're going to see these, maybe not the same situations or institutions, but we are going to see some conversation when it comes to financial systems, and maybe even an evolution in it or a revolution when it comes to these financial systems. So I just want you to be on the lookout for that. Now let's keep it moving, because I know you guys want to get to your sign, but I just thought it would take a moment to pause to kind of take in the fact that we have that groundbreaking information. And if you're coming in, hi, welcome to the live. We are going over Pluto and Shravana's transit. Right now, we have just discussed slavery and how it led to the establishment of financial institutions as well as Wall Street. And also, we talked a little bit about just a general overview of the energies last time this transit took place. We will get to your sign. I tried to keep things concise, but this was actually a very interesting period in American history because it was so unstable and because there was a lot of huge transformative moments going on at this time period. So I kept it consistent or concise to just a few things, just things that I was drawn to and that I felt happy researching, or maybe not happy researching because it's not fun to learn about slavery, but it's interesting. Especially if you are connected, and we are all technically connected to the transatlantic slave trade. Now, when it comes to the American Revolution and the founding of the Constitution. So during planet Pluto transiting Shravana, we see both the closing phase of the American Revolution. It opened when in Uttara Ashadha, and then it continued into Shravana, and it closed during Shravana. And we see the expansion of the conflict when it came to the American Revolution. Just days before the shift, on February 6, 1778, France formally joined the war, transforming into a broader international conflict. So Pluto actually, like I said, it expanded the conflict a couple of days before. Pluto's going into Shravana, France is joining, right? And then with Spain following in 1779. Under this planetary influence, the Treaty of Paris was also signed on September 3rd, 1784, making Great Britain's formal recognition of American independence. The American Revolution actually led to the development of a constitutional system that, in theory, placed political power in the hands of the people rather than a monarch. It introduced representative government here in America, at least, and a system of checks and balances intended to guard against tyranny. This connects directly to the representative of Shravana's deity, Vishnu. Here we see an attempt to rebalance political power, moving away from concentrated authority and stepping towards that representative governance, right? Though it's very obvious only some balance was restored. Furthermore, true to Shravana's association with media and sensation and extreme public discourse, in 1787, the transit of Pluto perfectly mirrors this quality with the formation of the U.S. Constitution. So Pluto retrograded back into Shravana in September 13th, as I was saying in the beginning, in 1787, just 4 days before the U.S. Constitution was signed in private on September 17th. Almost immediately on September 19th, while Pluto was retrograde in Shravana, the Pennsylvania Pocket and the Daily Advertiser leaked the full text to the public. I know we still had leaking things back in 1787, isn't that funny? People are still leaking things to the press today. This sparked a massive national media debate as the secret draft suddenly became an intellectual warfare fought through newspapers, according to John Hewitt's historical research published in the Marketing in 3 Eras conference proceedings book. Newspapers were flooded with letters and essays advocating for ratification, along with a large volume of contributions who would message and mail the newspapers and oppose to the Constitution. We had the Federalist and Anti-Federalist newspapers forcing the entire country to listen and respond to the new power structures. This was actually one of the first viral events in American history. Sounds crazy, but the Constitution went viral, guys. So we have two things here, right? When we're looking at this time period, and hopefully you guys, I'm making it easy for you guys to flow through and pay attention. We have this period where we talked about Shravana increasing conflict instead of getting to this place where it's pacifying things completely. I mean, it does. It increased it and then it kind of went down. Shravana is kind of like this climax point, right? And then we have an ending and almost like a rebuilding that's going on here as well. Very, very dynamic placement that we have when it comes to this. We also have a shift when it comes to power structures. Very Pluto related, very Shravana related when it comes to leadership, political leaders in particular. There were some shifts going on there, governments, and more than likely, we're probably going to experience the shifts in those areas today. And then, as I mentioned, that this in theory was a shift towards something more balanced rather than having a monarch or more concentrated powers of more wealthy individuals. The intention was to have more equal governance and political power. However, we know historically this power did not even didn't get distributed to women, didn't get distributed to Black people, didn't get distributed to any other minorities, didn't get distributed to even poor white people, didn't get distributed to anyone other than wealthy white elites, to be completely honest. So I just want you to say that. I want to say that. Hey, Shifting Lotus, it is good to see you. Thank you for joining the live here. I hope you're doing good too. I'm doing really great. I'm very happy to talk about the transit of Pluto and Shravana. I love doing the astrology videos. I can't say it enough. Hopefully you guys are learning about history as well as learning about what themes could come up now during this time period. So we may have some themes talking about restructuring of power, shifting of power, maybe some rebalancing or attempts at rebalancing when it comes to the spread of powers and systems. And also, you know, during this time period, we have the creation of that U.S. Constitution, which is the backbone of America. A lot of backbone systems were created during this time period. So conversations when it comes to the U.S. Constitution should be continuing and intensifying. And there's likely to be maybe a new U.S. Constitution or some changes going on here. Who knows? With a certain people, I guess we'll say DT in the White House, anything is possible. Anything certainly is possible. He has let us all know that. Yes, I feel it. Yeah, I do too, actually. I mean, I know this transit begun in February, and it was definitely a shift when it comes to, at least me personally, internal, about how I approach things. Like, it feels like this period is like very do or die, which I think is a very Pluto and Shravana feel. I don't know if you feel the same way, but it's almost as if like you've got to make these changes happen in your life now. You've got to push back against situations that are uncomfortable, that feel oppressive. That's like the feeling that at least I have been seeing, or I felt myself, but I could be wrong. It's hard to get a consensus on these things. I would love to know what you guys think. Bang, bang. This does feel like this, to be completely honest. And we're at the beginning of this transit, right? It's still not done with Uttara Ashadha. So Uttara Ashadha has to go through one last bang. And then we're going to be in Pluto and Shravana for till 2035. Now let's get into the common themes. So as you can see here, like what I was just talking about, we're dealing with major shifts when it comes to systems of power. While the American Revolution marked a restructuring of power in the constitutional system, this period was predominantly moved towards actual central authority. Isn't that interesting? So globally, even though there were certain shifts happening, you know, especially in America with the American Revolution, telling the British to get off our backs, if we look at the global picture, power actually gets more centralized during this period. It gets more concentrated at the top. People who are already in authority actually secure more control for themselves. So China continued to centralize power under, I hope I'm saying this wrong, Huilong Emperor, through the state-led censorship including the banning of and destruction of thousands of literary works. In India, following the American Revolutionary War, Britain actually further heightened control over British East India Company, particularly in 1784 with the India Act, which increased direct government oversight. And in West Africa, this actually remained a mixture of centralized and decentralized environments. And that was obviously due to slavery. It's kind of hard to have centralized governance when half of the population is being taken. Slaves are different, how should I say, colonies are being pushed against each other. I don't know if they're called colonies, tribes. Like you have the Asante tribe, and I hope I'm saying that right. Asante. Oh, actually, let me get that right. I don't want to be ignorant here. I was reading a bit about them, and I was going to go into them, but I was like, this is actually, I don't want to be too long. Sorry, was it the Quan Long? Yes, that's what I'm trying to say, but I can't pronounce anything. I can't pronounce anything. Yeah, we had the Asante tribe, and they were actually a very powerful tribe within the region. But because there was a lot of competing different tribes going on at the period, what happened to a lot of tribes, including them, is they would actually take people from other tribes, sell them to the British, and trade for weapons and etc. Right? It's not like the British came and then all of the African tribes came together and sung Kumbaya. No, they still had competitors. They still had rivals, right? So it was either you have to destroy your rivals and participate in slavery in order to gain weapons that you don't have access to, or your rivals are going to do that. So it's kind of a lose-lose situation. Very unfortunate. This I know it's so tragic. I'm saying the history out loud, but it is so tragic. Okay. And sorry for my pronunciation, guys. I'm terrible at pronunciating things. You know, it's my dyslexia. It plays a role in that. If you know somebody with dyslexia, you know it's very difficult for us, especially when it comes to pronunciation, reading things, word retrieval. It's very irritating. But yeah, that's a point I wanted to make and throw that in there. But there's a lot more history when it comes to that I'm not going to get into at the moment because we want to keep this video tight and short. So as Spain implemented the Bourbon reforms, which intensified the use of, I'm going to say this, Mita system. It was a system that enforced indigenous population into mining labor, helping to spark an uprising in Peru. So you can see how more power gets concentrated, more power gets centralized, even in America, actually. After the revolution, we have this theory of, everyone's supposed to be more free and more equal, but that wasn't the case. And I'm not even just talking about when it comes to women and minorities. We already know that that wasn't happening for them. But also when it came to white men, the people who already had a bag, who already secured one through slavery or some merchant, whatever deals that they had going on in their lives, they were the ones that actually were still in power. And not only that, but you still had people pushing towards like taxing farmers, which ultimately led to instances like Shays' Rebellion, which happened during this period. So still the power was concentrated towards the wealthy and the powerful. It didn't really change too much when it came to that. But in theory, I guess white men had voting rights. So that's something that happened, I guess. We had the economic restructuring and lasting institutions being built during this period. No problem at all. I love this info so much. You're the only one doing this examining of our outer planet, etc. transit. Wow, thank you. Yeah, I guess you're right. There's not too many videos out there like this, but I think it's important because the history helps us understand, and the outer planets are hugely impactful, as we can see here. They may be slow, but they pack a punch. So I think that's important to why we should talk about them. So as I was saying before, we had this transit bringing the restructuring and development of financial systems through the exploitation of enslaved labor. Also, the establishment of the U.S. Constitution, these lasting sort of effects that have gone on for 200 years. Isn't that crazy? That is how powerful Pluto's transit can be. When it transits something, it affects things for the next 200 years, as long as it's transit. And I think that goes for every planet, right? Even with planets like Saturn, Jupiter, like Jupiter takes every 12 years. And so the effects of Jupiter is going to be 12 years of wherever it's transiting in your chart. So whatever happens during that Pluto second house transit of Jupiter, you may be feeling those effects for the next 12 years until it resets itself. And that is what Pluto is doing technically now. It's going through like a reset. We also have information and media and public discourse. This is a Shravana theme here, but you know what? Pluto's going to take it and make it explosive. We have things going viral. Now, this is not the first viral event. You could say the first viral event in American history actually occurred during Uttara Ashadha with the book by Thomas. What's his name? What's his last name? Starts with an A. Is it Aquinas? Well, he wrote a book called Common Sense, which was all about why America should stand up to the British Empire. And thus, it was actually kind of used as a recruiting tool when it came to joining the military for the war as well. But that was the first viral event. And then Shravana brought in more, especially when it comes to the leaking of the Constitution, explosive debates. Even debates over slavery began at this time. So that actually became a topic of conversation. I was reading about a case in Britain, which I don't think I included in this script because it was getting too long, where it was essentially, I think, a slave had escaped and then come back to the British colonies, and people were he got captured, I think, by his own old owner or something like that. And there was this whole debate about whether he should be seen as freed or not freed. He actually did win his freedom at the end of the day, but there was a whole trial period. And ultimately, the verdict in the trial was that slavery was technically not legal in Britain, which was kind of strange because even after this ruling that clarified that slavery was not legal in Britain at the time, people still were talking about escaped slaves in the newspaper that was happening in Britain. They were also talking about the selling of slaves. You know how, you auction things. So one of the ways people auction things was in the newspaper. And so it's like, you're saying it's not legal, but it's still happening, right? Didn't really make sense, but it's true. So most of the time people were still oppressed, but definitely you had a rise in abolitionism during this time period. Also, one of the themes during this time period is transformation through pressure. This is very much a Shravana theme. As you can see, these are high intensity situations that were going on here, forcing the change. It wasn't as if people said, you know what, out of the goodness of my heart, I think we got to let those Americans go. I think we've got to free some enslaved people. Maybe certain people said that, but ultimately, things actually came to a head because of conflict, because of instability, because of inequalities, because people didn't have any money, because people felt things were unjust. The same things that cause change in uprisings today. People are like, we're being heavily taxed. We're broke. There's no financial opportunities. Things are hard. That is when it is time to rebel. We also have rebalancing. As I said before, it's not equal rebalancing, but there were attempts to rebalance power structures. But this was only for those select groups of in the American Revolution, officials who were elected. But the American officials who were now elected, but the American Revolution, when it came to rebalancing of power, was in favor of those who were already landowners and wealthy individuals, as I just said, while others continued to undergo economic hardship and inequality. A lot of the times people think that when they look back on this time period that everyone was doing great except for women and minorities. But actually, pretty much everyone was in a very tough bind. But obviously there's ranking orders to that, with enslaved people being the ones who suffered the most. But essentially, nobody was happy about what was going on economically during this time period. You have to remember, wars are expensive, right? Even right now, as we talk about, we're in a war, at least America, with Iran, and look how it is affecting things globally. Gas prices are up, shipping prices are up. America is spending $1 billion a day when it comes to the war, and then asking the government for more money. That becomes more expensive for the American people, because how are we getting this money? The only way we're getting it is through taxes, or, heavy taxation, etc. Or maybe there's some other way. They print more money. That's the other option. But then that actually causes inflation and devalues the dollar. So ultimately, the American people pay the price. Similarly, that was going on in this period, right? You have people who have to make up for the war. And so local governments, or even, I guess, it'd be more local governments, because the federal government wasn't as established. We were just getting this done. They would tax people heavily to pay for the wars. People didn't like that. So actually, it was a lot of tough times all around, Unfortunately. Let's moving on to predictions. Let me actually get another sip of this. So for me, I have quite a few predictions. Not sure if I want to say them all, but I was thinking them through and kind of filtering them out. What I believe is going to happen when we talk about 2026 to 2035 with this Pluto and Shravana forecast, I think there's going to be a massive shift into solopreneurship and portfolio careers. I talked about this a little bit when I was talking about Rahu and Sustabisha, and how it forces people to be more independent from systems. Well, Pluto and Shravana wants to do that as well. Now, during this time period, when we talk about the last time Pluto was in Shravana, it was more so of a breaking away from the governments, and also people were more so in a survival mindset. That's a little bit true today, but it's not to this level, right? So what's likely going to happen is we'll have people who want to rebel against the government, obviously, for really obvious reasons. But you're likely to also have people who want to rebel against corporate entities or organizations. And one way to do this and to break free and kind of do your own thing is to essentially be a person who is highly skilled, and you sell those skills to different work environments instead of keeping, like a lawyer, instead of being an in-house lawyer. You would actually be somebody who is having your own firm, and then companies come to you and you sell your skills to them. So it's almost like people are following this lawyer-like structure that is common today, but isn't necessarily common for every field. You do have it expanding now, and I think that is going to increase over the time period. And then also, when I was doing my research, because this is Astro Tarot research, this is all research, guys. There were some projections. I was looking at Upwork's future workforce report, and they said by 2030, freelancers are projected to make up over 50% of the U.S. workforce. So that's something that they are likely to happen there. And obviously, because of this, we're going to have traditional employment declining. And small businesses may actually increasingly rely on private credit because of this. It is likely that there's going to be some sort of either revenues-based financing, or even alternative lending or funding methods when it comes to companies, small businesses, etc. You're likely to have platforms offering like creditor financing, invoice factoring, and income-based loans, right? And I think that's more than likely going to happen more so and more as we move more towards private credit and private loans. likely how things are going to be shaped is going to keep up with the evolution of these changes. And so let's say you're a person, you're a content creator, right? You want to start your content journey. And let's say it's 2030 and you, instead of going to a bank and getting some loan to say, I want to start my content journey, I want to start my own business as a content creator, you might go to a private firm who is going to lend you private credit so that you can finance and back your business. But obviously, private credit is going to charge a higher interest rate. So that is something that is within the realm of possibility. It's not too crazy, you know, but that could also be something that is within the realm of possibility there. So I just want you guys to think about how things could be shaping up. We already know that Pluto in Shravana changes financial systems. We also may have some companies relying on, as I said before, those talent platforms. So Upwork, Fiverr, TopDoll. There's probably going to be a rise in more platforms for freelancers as well. I think also because Pluto in Shravana connects to media and branding, part of you marketing yourself to your employers is creating your own, I guess, work brand, right? Instead of just applying with your resume, you create a whole online presence that is representative of your work, where you talk about what you do, where you advertise your skill sets. And similarly to how we have websites where people talk about their work and the things that they've done, it may actually become like, let's say we have a creator space like YouTube. And instead of people uploading videos, they're uploading their professional profiles, and you can visit their page where they are working on their craft and their skill set. And then maybe we have those companies reach out to those people or hire them, like kind of like you do on Fiverr. You know, it's like a professional marketplace, but through a social media lens, if that makes sense. It's like combining those two things together, combining like something like Upwork and YouTube, professional marketplace, and then companies reach people through that lens. And maybe they search engineer, and then they have a list of engineers come up within their region, their area. They have their channel or whatever things are their professional channel that's going on. So it might be a little bit more creative when it comes to the job profiles. It's probably not going to be the same. I filled out a resume and I applied for everything. I'm not saying for all of the things. Who knows where things are going to go? That was my thought process as I was thinking through this. You also more than likely are going to have the exposure of financial systems and wealth and inequality. So we actually have reports from the World Economic Forum and Oxfam consistently highlighting the growing wealth gaps. So expect a lot of public pressure when it comes to tax reform, when it comes to digital currencies, when it comes to alternative financial system, when it comes to wages and fair wages. I would imagine that there is going to be a lot of pushback in those areas. We may feel like AI will empower people on a level to be those mini corporations. As I was kind of introducing before, though that's more of a worker mindset, you actually might even have people who are looking to remain as an entrepreneur, and they use AI, like an AI assistant, to help scale their business, help scale their corporations. I know that I have used this, especially when I'm using things like ClickUp for my family business. You know, we can use AI assistants to help us use meeting notes, send reminders. It's very useful. So you may see people, smaller businesses, smaller individuals, companies use these AI tools to quickly advance themselves. And there's a lot that AI can do. I know a lot of people think about AI and they think about ChatGPT and generating images from Microsoft or Sora, but there is so much more that AI can do, especially in the health field, when it comes to, obviously driving cars, when it comes to the creation of art. It's It's very scary, guys. I will say, obviously, I don't think AI is that creative, but we're at actually the beginning stages of AI. This is how scary AI is. We're at the not the adolescence, we're at the I just been born stage. Maybe it's 2 years old, something like that. It's just learning how to walk. So this is the dumbest AI will ever be. It will only advance and get smarter. And people are even now getting tricked by AI. So imagine 10 years from now and what AI is going to look like. So I'm just saying, very scary times are fascinating. It depends on how you want to use things. I think also we're going to have some more decentralized assets. I think things like blockchain and Bitcoin are going to expand, or digital currencies as well, especially because we have this rise in global spending in the US. We're just spending away, creating trillions and trillions of debt, making the US dollar weaker. And also, with who we have in the White House now, we're not exactly gaining a lot of friends. And so there isn't as much incentive to rely on the dollar. And which is why I want to go into this, which is why the war in Iran is so impactful. Because Iran is making this power move to say, yeah, you can move oil through the Strait of Hormuz, but you have to trade it in Chinese yen. They are specifically doing this to devalue the dollar and to cause financial destruction to America, which I understand it's a very smart move, because if you have people trading things in Chinese, I think it's yen, right? Am I saying that right? Sorry, yuan. Okay, let's not get into it. In Chinese money, let's not talk about how ignorant I am. In Chinese money, then obviously people will less and less think about the dollar as being the standard in which to trade oil, which will not be good for America. So I definitely see that happening there. I think we're also going to see some mental health and burnout become central to global issues, right? Mental health and burnout is a huge issue when it comes to the workforce right now. So you can expect people to slowly push back against those work environments. Once again, those corporate bosses. And more than likely, because of this pushback, companies may push for more boundaries around work-time balance and have slower productivity models. Maybe we get more like New Zealand a little bit. I don't know. It's hard to imagine America slowing down a bit. I remember when I was in New Zealand, it was like, it was such a culture shock because, I'd be out in the street and I'm like, oh my God, it's Friday night. It's 11 p.m. and it's empty because people go home and they have more work-life balance and they're not like trying to blow off steam at the club or bars all the time. So it's like, wow, this is shocking. Will I think America gets to that place? No, but I think it is possible that we might lean more into that. Also, we have, I think there's going to be an increase in global remote work as a part of that rebalancing that is going on there. And then I'll just do two more of my predictions here because I don't want to get too much into it. I want to dull you guys and bore you guys. I think this is what's going to happen. And this is, I think, a very important one. We're going to have government institutions, as I said, face accountability and crisis, increased leaks, data transparency, and public scrutiny. While we're going to have these whistleblower events, policy reforms, and institutional restructuring, just as we had in 1778, 1787. I'm not saying exactly the same, but like similarly how we have financial restructurings, which, let me give you an example. We may have pension funds, insurance companies, and endowments heavily allocating to private credit for private yields. Think about BlackRock, and all of those other companies here. So what this looks like and how it might affect you, let's say you have a life insurance company, right? Or whatever the case may be, some insurance company. So more insurance companies actually might take the money that you send for their monthly payments, because monthly because insurance companies, they invest those payments. And more than likely, they may take some of that money that they have in investment and they may move it into private credit for higher returns. Now, insurance companies use your premiums to grow their money, and more of it being directly linked to, how do I say this? More of it being directly linked to companies instead of going through banks or maybe even the stock market. This actually could help them earn more money, but it also puts them and their clients at higher risk because these deals are less visible, there's less oversight. And not only that, but it's a little bit more risky as well. So these companies cannot repay, let's say, excuse me, I don't know, I think I got some acid reflux in my stomach. If these companies cannot repay their loans, the insurance company can lose money. Let's keep that in mind here. So taking the money that people invest in insurance and putting it into private loans or private credit where there's less oversight can become problematic. Not only, and if insurance companies lose money, obviously there's less insurance payouts. Like you try to file that claim one day, they're gonna put you through some uphill battle to get your money because they don't got it, right? That is likely gonna happen. Or what can happen as a result of this, as insurance companies may enforce higher premiums and stricter coverage and reduced benefits for you. So let's say they don't want to reduce the claim. They may reduce some other benefits. They may up the charge that you pay in life insurance because they have this risky venture going on here with private credit. So it really can affect the everyday person. So I wanted to spotlight that type of thing going on here. But I do want to say this. Despite that, I believe that private credit is probably going to go through some sort of crash or correction or some sort of issue going on there. I don't think it's going to go away, especially now that we have so many companies connected to the private credit market, and because governments have such strict regulations when it comes to loaning people through banks. I just don't see it going away anytime soon. It meets a need. And even if it crashes and destabilizes, you're still going to have people going towards it because it is a growth opportunity. You know, that's the way it is. So I do think that that is part of the issue here. But there may be some more regulations or reporting requirements when it comes to certain industries or even when it comes to private credit. Don't know how regulated, but who knows? It's also possible these industries will regulate themselves. I know I recently read an article, can't remember which private equity company this was, if it was BlackRock or someone else. But basically there was a scandal where they were lending people money, right? Let's say we have Aries, we have BlackRock, and we have an institution. This institution says, all right, I need to borrow $200K, and I am actually going to use my cars as leverage. Let's say it's a car company, a car selling company. They sell cars. And they go to BlackRock and they get the $200K loan, but then they also go to Aries and they get a $200K loan, right? So these companies may not know that this company here, this institution that sells cars, took out two separate loans and used the cars on their lot as leverage for both. And so they see the companies losing money, and then boom, both companies come to collect. But there's not enough wealth to go around, right? The company has to liquidate, but they're losing money. They're losing money because they've already promised BlackRock $200K in investments and interest. And they also charge, Aries also charged them $200K with interest. So neither one of them are getting paid their full amount, and thus they lose money. So there may be more regulation and oversight when it comes to these type of matters. Also, when I was talking about how companies may regulate themselves, you'll likely see these financial firms, these equity firms, likely be more strict about who they are lending their own money to. I don't know if they'll be that strict because they're turning a profit and they're making incredible gains, but likely they're going to do more background checks. They're going to investigate if the company has any dummy companies, if they are offsetting their debt to those dummy companies. They're going to likely look into see if they're cooking the books, do things add up, instead of being more trusting. So that is something that I want to say. So there may be more systems being implemented when it comes to those financial oversights. So I know we talked a lot about finances, but that was a very popular theme for this period, guys. So I just want you to know when it comes to jobs. Oh, one more thing I want to say, likely jobs are going to remove certain requirements. So Google and IBM are already some of the leading companies when it comes to this. They've removed degree requirements for many roles, and likely it's more so your skills or the ability to provide results rather than formal education. So there's a possibility that formal education becomes devalued, or it has to be revolutionized and get a lot cheaper, because at this time, it's not worth the value that it's bringing. Lastly, I want to talk about love, and then we're going to take a break. And this is a shorter section because, as we saw during this time period, love wasn't a popular topic. It was more so dating for survival, but we can still make correlations to today just based upon the attitudes. So since a lot of people weren't thinking about survival, they're just thinking about like, do we match up? Do our families make money? You come from a good family. Does it make sense for us to come together? In fact, romantic love, that idea didn't get as popular. I'm not saying it wasn't around, because people are people, but it didn't get as popular into the 1900s. So I just want you to know that. At this time, people were just like, I have this skill set. I come from this family. I make this amount of money. Like, I have this potential. This is what's going on in love. So what I see reflecting in this 2026, 2035 period is I think love is going to reflect the practical aspect of that time period, where love actually becomes a little bit more strategic. People may prioritize financial stability, lifestyle alignment, and long-term compatibility alongside emotional connection, right? I'm not saying that people are just going to be exactly in the same survival mode mindset, but it is likely that they're going to start thinking a little bit more practically about who they're connecting with. So we also may see more so partnerships working in collaboration. The same time then, right, we're looking at each other's skill set. I'm a farmer, you're a farmer, we both know how to farm. Boom, let's come together. It may be something like this where people are looking at like, I want to build something with my partner. Maybe we're building towards a company, we have shared goals, we want to share a business, but whatever the case may be, it may be this theme of mutual support for a lot of people. I also think that more people will be staying single longer, okay? Because as we have this shift in dynamics, it obviously becomes more difficult to rise to certain standards. And if you are not seen as more of a logical prospect, or people may not choose you, and then vice versa, I want to say if you're somebody who has higher standards and you want to be more cautious about who you are spending your time with, which I think is the name of the game for this time period, and more strategic, that is going to cause you to have to be single a little bit longer. So I think there's also going to be these periods of withdrawal, self-focus, and more intentional partnerships, essentially. I think also, lastly, I want to say power and imbalances in relationships will become more visible. The same way we talked about the rebalancing when it came to governance and etc., we may have to undergo some rebalancing when it comes to relationships. Currently in America, women pull their weight a lot more than men when it comes to relationships, especially in modern day times. Women also end up taking on the second shift, which connects to domestic labor. So not only do they work their full-time job, but they end up having to do most of the chores at home as well. And then also women tend to focus a lot more on growing emotional intelligence. And so part of the emotional labor aspect is women also have to carry the brunt of starting the conversations, having to guide someone through their emotions, or even being like that therapist type. And so I think people are going to push back against that a lot more. And I think you can already see that coming, at least on the online sphere. And likely things might be influenced and come in person, might start happening in person as well. There's a reason it is called social influencing, or being a social influencer, because of these conversations actually do influence people in real life. All right, before we get to your sign, guys, I do want to take a break and get some water. Let me know if you have any questions. I will come back and talk about those questions, and then we can jump right into your sign. If there are no questions, we'll hop right into it, because I know you guys, this is what you came here for. You want to know how things are going to unfold for you, and I don't want to waste any time for that. So let me get some water and I will be right back. Losing it. All right, so there are no questions I see here. Ooh, let me get comfortable. Oh, sorry guys. Some people can't stand the sound, but I gotta unstiffen my neck here. Let's hop into it. Let's not waste any time. As I said before, this is Vedic astrology, right? We're talking about Vedic astrology here. So you should look at your Vedic chart. You can look from the sun, moon, or ascendant, but I always encourage you to look from the ascendant, as this will more than likely reflect majority of your experiences. Secondly, if you had to look at one or choose between one or the other, I would choose the sun. I find that to be, if you're choosing between which do I look at next, I would choose the sun over the moon. I found that to also be something that is like a core indicator of your being and what you might be going through, versus the moon. I found that it's just like, this is how I feel about things. And usually those are your experiences through the world of your emotions. So, but some people connect to the moon more. So I'm not going to discourage you from looking at it through that perspective. If that works for you, go ahead. But I always encourage these ascendant. Now let's get into this. So for Aries, this is transiting your 10th house, the house of career, public image, authority, leadership, goals. So what this can mean is you might find that old bosses and leadership may be out the window. There could be a reshuffling of leadership at work. You may have to deal with new management, new rules, or shifting expectations. And you yourself could actually find yourself moving towards a position of leadership. And then also, I want to say this can actually look like rebalancing your workload, finding jobs with better benefits, making sure that what you put in is what you get out. And you yourself may even find that you're looking to sometimes shift industries when we talk about this here. But really, it's more so I'm trying to demand my rightful benefits, or accumulate my what's the word I'm looking for? My goals, my what's due to me, what's owed to me. That is, I'm trying to make sure that I get that. That's kind of like what this feeling is like, and standing strong in that. This can also look like a departure from your usual work or career pivot, as I was mentioning before, and changes how your role is structured going on here. You may move on to something more stable or more formal. I'm not saying there won't be any ups and downs during this period, but, you know, this is actually something that by the end of the transit, you might find yourself in a more seasoned position or more stable position, which could be tied to bigger institutions, could not. It depends on the area you want to go in. This can also make your reputation very much talked about here, whether that's you being controversial or that is you being seen as somebody who can handle a lot or who has gone through some things, because Pluto does represent and connect to a lot of traumatic situations. And so that could actually be part of your story. For example, let's say you're a cancer survivor. That is a very Plutonian story, and that could be part of your workplace reputation during this time period. Hopefully not. I mean, hopefully you don't get cancer or anything. I never wish that on anyone. And also I want to say that you might be more pulled into workplace discussions, maybe even discussions connecting to leadership or the changes when it comes to the company. But either way, you're definitely going to have some pressures and have to step yourself up within the work environment at this time. This can be good. Like I said, this can be a call towards leadership. Let me get my charger, guys. My phone, my computer looks like it's about to die. All right. For Taurus, we have this going on in your 9th house, the house of travel, the house of education, the house of law, philosophy, personal beliefs, as well as, I guess you could say publishing as well. And I like to think of like movies. Why was I saying movies? Well, I would like to think of movies. That is part of something that can be here. It's just like media in general can be the 9th house as well. Courts connect to the 9th house, but we already said law, right? Anything law related could be 9th house. Heck, anything having to do with governance and structure can have to connect to the 9th house as well. So, HR, compliance, those are things that are very 9th house. So what this can mean for you is, as always, when we have Pluto or any major transit going through your 9th house, it is definitely reshaping your beliefs and questioning those beliefs. That's pretty much the thing that's going on here. One thing with Pluto, though, is Pluto digs deep. And involves very intensive research. So I wouldn't be surprised if you guys were really tapping in deeply with yourself about where your belief systems come from, or even quite literally, maybe you're going to enter a research program or some sort of higher learning program during this time, and that involves some intensive research. I really wouldn't be shocked. Maybe you work within a legal environment and you're a lawyer, and sometimes lawyers have to investigate. They got to do a little research. They got to look things up. And you might find this period is filled with having to gain a lot of different knowledge. Like you feel like you're constantly learning and growing. And maybe you're like, okay, the old ways are a little bit out the window and we're in new territory now. You may also feel as though you may want to challenge certain authority figures, especially if you are working for someone else or if you're in an educational environment, because Pluto in the 9th house can connect to power struggles against bosses, mentors, HR, teachers. That can be a part of the story here. Their behavior could be a little, and you're just like, oh, I've got to say something about that. And Taurus, you may have to stand up to people during this time period. It actually does look beneficial for you. I think that this is a a good placement in terms of sticking up for yourself within those types of environment. You'll also be looking into what actually motivates you, what is pushing you forward, what makes you want to get up and get out of bed. And just in general, like if you have a hobby, you could be researching a lot of that during this time, or investigating that, or even going on trips, maybe transformational trips. Pluto connects to wild times, extreme emotions. And so you might go on a trip that just feels like totally spiritually transformative or emotionally transformative. And that is just part of your story at this time. You also may want to move towards more practical real world knowledge rather than just kind of like traditional paths. And you're just like, okay, so what actually is going to make me money? Will provide stability in my life? And instead of looking at, okay, I think it looks better this way. Instead of looking at whether you could get a job at a good company, like a big four financial institution, or if you work in finances or something like that, you start to look at, what is the way of the future and how can I ride that wave? And the reason I say this, because the 9th house is like the subconscious of the 12th house. It's like that what is pulling me to want to do something. And so what could be a part of pulling you to do something is obviously where you think the future is going. Sagittarius is known for its perception and foresight, which is why you'll find a lot of Sagittarius energy connected to witchcraft, mysticism, psychics, etc. Not saying it's the most popular placement, but Shravana is. So having Pluto and Shravana here can have to do with having a lot of foresight going on in your life. And then we want to talk about how this can be an exposure to new ideas, new perspectives, and global conversation, engage in more teaching and learning, for sure, impactful teaching and learning. In fact, you could be seen as a strong guru and teacher at this time within your life. And honestly, you're rebalancing your beliefs, so it actually reflects your reality. Maybe you believed one thing and you haven't been living in that truth, and now it's time for you to actually live in that truth, and your life starts to reflect your values. And I think that you also will be more open to learning things and figuring out what's possible. This is a very much I'm getting you out of your comfort zone type of vibe to this. Gemini. All right, Gemini. Pluto's transiting your 8th house, the house of shared resources, debts, taxes, loans, investments, power dynamics, and emotional intimacy, and in-laws, or pregnancy, or even transition periods in your life. It represents a lot of things. That 8th house here is something else. And Pluto likes being there because Pluto's like, oh, I'm back in my bag. This is my element. So you're definitely going through a very powerful, I don't know why I got that accent, powerful. You're definitely going through a very powerful transformation at this time. There may be some power dynamics when it comes to financial institution and personal relationships. Maybe even if you have a relationship, you're married, you guys may have more conversations when it comes to how you're deciding to do finances within your household. You may become more aware of who holds control within certain situations. I've definitely seen the 8th house to connect to having to go through a lot of different power struggles, and it can be with anyone. The whole point is just you're going through a power struggle right now, and this can be a period of pushing it back against any sort of oppressive nature in this area. This can also look like it's bringing in major financial shifts and opportunities which are tied to your resources, whether that be you actually get support from your girlfriend, wife, husband, I don't know, daughter, whoever. You get support from in-laws. It can be like you're coming into settlements, inheritances. Support from the government is actually seen through this house, like unemployment, FMLA, trying to think of other things, Medicaid. This is all 8th house things because it connects to shared resources. It's a part of like employment, taxes, all of these things. And this could be part of your story at this time. Heck, who knows? Maybe you go from being in a place of unemployment, collecting unemployment checks, to having this huge breakthrough in investments and now you're a millionaire because of your investments. This is the type of thing that can happen during this time period because of its upheaval nature of Pluto. So you guys are making the big money at this time or you have potential for it. This can also represent that deep intimacy, right? Where you're making solid connections with people you feel strong attraction to or strong care for, and you're opening up in a way that you've never done before. You feel like you can be vulnerable with someone or someone's. There's also a lot of conversation when it comes to contracts that you sign, deeper, looking deeper at the fine print. When it comes to pretty much anything, any contract that you're going to look at or anything that you're reading, you want to look at the fine print more at this time. And there's a real push to be seen or to be respected or acknowledged. And also, this is a very transition period when we talk about Pluto in the 8th house, meaning this is a time period of, it's noisy in this house, time period of potential pregnancy, time period of divorce, time period of graduating, time period of like any big transformation of how you change and shift and see yourself or your identity is going to be a part of this story at this time. And then you might even be building some more financial literacy, which will cause you to have more boundaries. And then also in an intimate setting, like we talked about, this can bring additional boundaries when it comes to relationship and what's fair. Do you give too much? I gave that example earlier in love, how women have that second shift. This can look like pulling away from that. If you're somebody who does that, or if you're somebody who's a people pleaser, this is like, actually, maybe I don't want to do that anymore. That doesn't seem right for me. And you're looking for something, a change and empowerment. All right, let's move on to Cancer. So Cancer, this is happening in your 7th house. And this is relationships, partnership, contracts, one-on-one dynamics, the public. If you have any social media and you're out there, courthouses, another legal house when we talk about the 7th house here. And so this can bring about, it can bring about having to go through legal battles, but I don't want to necessarily focus on that because this can also look like replacing or transforming relationships in your life. Either you are connecting stronger to people or you're filtering out people in your life that you just don't want there. You're like, I don't really relate to this type of person anymore, and I'm not looking to connect with them. One thing I see with the 7th house is it does tend to bring new people into your life who are more than likely going to help you reshape your idea of relationships or even your relationship to yourself. And they're going to even help you understand exactly who you need in your life. Now, Pluto going through the 7th house almost reminds me of Mars going through the 7th house. As I've mentioned before, 8th house could be just general power struggles. 7th house can also be general power struggles as well. And then 10th house is power struggle through work environments. But 7th house just brings people into your life who have this power and control dynamic. They want you to do the things that they want you to do. They want you to be interested in the things that they want you're interested in. They're kind of looking for a less yes man. It can also help you encounter people who have a lot of resources available to them as well. But it's very interesting at this time when we talk about the one-on-one dynamics. As I said, you can also meet people who are very helpful towards you, who are very generous, who are very open with sharing their resources, who want to come together and empower each other. So that's something that is part of things. Forming stronger alliances. That's something that is like you're creating intentional partnerships that are deeper and more meaningful and more impactful. That's part of the story here when we talk about Pluto. This can also reflect, restructuring those commitments and agreements and things that you've set out to do. Maybe you are up for a contract renewal and you're just like, I'm never going to accept this type of contract again. I didn't really like that, so I'm going to negotiate something else. Or you look for job roles that match for what you're looking for, or even, it doesn't have to be job roles. There's so many different things we sign contracts for, but I'm specifically thinking about jobs because the 7th house can connect to the 10th house as well, since it's 10th from the 10th. But you're looking for positions that are going to bring more long-term stability, or even relationships that seem more stable. You know, I'm not saying you'll never meet someone unstable during this period, but you're going to be really put off by these type of people eventually by the end of this transit. Some relationships, like I said, they deepen and they form long-term commitments, while others will dissolve because they didn't have a strong foundation. But whatever it is that's happening during this time period, the experiences you have will set the foundation for relationships for the rest of your life. You know, you're not going to look at relationships the same coming out of this transit. And which makes me think that you're going to be more self-assured within yourself. You're going to grow through certain dynamics that you experience. And you are going to feel as though you're coming out a little bit better on the other side when it comes to your partnerships and your connections to other people during this time period. Trying to think of anything else. You can also meet people who are very thoughtful and very insightful. You know, they may not be known as intellectuals, but they may be known for having street smarts. That's something Pluto will bring. Also, you know, this is a time period where you have to confront what's not working within relationships. Sometimes it's being too trusting in the wrong individuals. Sometimes it's not being trusting enough and being more vulnerable. But whatever the case may be, this is about improving your relationships in your life. Worst case scenario, because I mentioned before, Shravana connects to isolation. This can look like you're being pulled into isolation, away from people, and as you reassess who needs to be along for the ride. But I think it's going to be more so about addressing imbalances within partnerships and relationships, and strengthening key relationships that support you, signing contracts that support you, pushing it back against anything unfair legally, and also possibly meeting someone who is, I'm not gonna lie, Pluto is not a calm-like energy. They're very much powerhouses. If I think about anybody who's had Pluto on the ascendant, Pluto conjunct moon, Pluto conjunct sun, you never really forget them for good or for worse. For better or for worse, it's like you really don't forget them. So you're gonna meet some characters at this time. I want to prepare you for that. Some of them be great, some of them not so great. That's the story of life, right? But I do think that this is going to be a transformation for the better. Hopefully you find true love. Pluto can definitely reassess as to how you give love. And Pluto talks about conversations about generational love. All right, on to Leo. Sorry, Leo, I was feeling a little bit of Cancer into you. We have themes of things being in your ninth house, which is work, daily routines, responsibilities, health, services. It can connect to dating. It connect to, like, if you have a side business and you're trying to make it into a real business, that would be very sixth house. It connect to who you hire, as well as being of service to yourself. And this also connects to conflicts and things that need to be solved. So what this means for you, Leo, is this can look like banding together in the workplace to form alliances, unions. Like, we want to come together and push back against management. We're forming more, could be official unions, could be non-official unions, whatever, against the conditions that you've put us under, and we're not going to stand for it. That's possible. You might even find yourself, just rallying around truth or fairness, not just at work, but in any environment that involves like your daily activities. You might notice certain things, like you're at a restaurant and you see somebody is being served before you, and you came in like 30 minutes earlier than this person, and you're sitting at a table where it's wobbly and they've put you in the dark corner, and you're just like, you know what? This is BS. I know it sounds like a small thing, but in at least our society, because we have these microaggressions, these actually become big stories. So you might find yourself calling that out at this time. Any service that seems unequal, unfair, this doesn't seem right to you. You might draw some clear lines between employees and leadership. That's something that you could see within your environments, or you yourself is just like, I don't want to be too cozy with the bosses and things like that, or like sometimes you have bosses who try to cozy up to you and they get really weird, and who knows, like maybe they're lonely or maybe they have some other predatory reason for it. But you might push back against those dynamics and set the tone and say, actually, I'm not going to go for that at all. So back off. That could be part of the story here. You may also be somebody who is looking to hire people, if you are in a position to hire people who make your life easier, who completely change the name of the game. This can be, for example, I feel like I'm always using diets and stuff, for example, probably because I'm always hungry. You can hire a personal trainer and they completely transform the way you eat, the way you exercise, and that becomes a part of your daily routine. But expect some huge changes in your daily routine at this time. For some of you, this can look like changing jobs. For some of you, this can look like unemployment. For some of you, worst case scenario, knock on wood, this doesn't happen. It can be getting sick, or even looking for ways to get healthier or get health. Let's say you're somebody who suffers from a mental illness. You may not know that. Not everyone knows they suffer from certain mental illnesses. You go see a professional, you get diagnosed, you get help that you need, and it changes your life. And, you know, it's kind of like that. Maybe you get certain medication and that medication helped you. It's like putting on glasses for the first time, right? Or if you're someone who needed a hearing aid, it's like putting in a hearing aid for the first time. This can look like fighting back against unfair bills, debts, financial obligations that are going on here. I know here in the DMV area, a lot of people are complaining about their electricity bills. Some people are getting crazy bills, $1,000 bills. So I would imagine during this time, there's going to be something that needs to be done about that. People are definitely going to try to pull that back. Definitely opportunities to secure a loan or pay off a loan. I really do think that if you have a loan during this period, you're likely to pay this off. If you're responsible and you're really focused on that, or you get a loan and it helps you grow in some way. Hopefully it doesn't burden you more. This can also look like obtaining rentals. It's not necessarily property. I haven't seen the 6th house for property, but it's definitely like I'm staying someplace for a bit. But that's just part of the story. Also, when we look at things, we have increased communication in the workplace, increased meetings, discussions, or even gossip. Think about how Shravana had those themes of things going viral. So you may even have some really controversial stories around your work environment at this time. So be on the lookout for some juicy gossip or some wild restructuring within the work environment. You might actually reach a breaking point when it comes to your health routine, work habits. Maybe you're just like, I'm tired of this commute. Like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I'm going and moving and I'm going to go live in Barcelona because the lifestyle's easier and I can walk around and I don't have to drive, right? This is something that can happen. We already talked about burnout. So this can actually get to a place where you get to burnout and you have to take action. And you're just like, I can't keep doing things the same way. You become more detail oriented about how things are handled. You become more aware of any enemies or people who are out to get you, especially at work. But definitely you have a sense of awareness of like understanding more of those personal dynamics. As I said, this is the house of conflicts. And so enemies come to light during this time. And this can actually bring about heavy competition when it comes to the work environment. And you kind of having to do your research to how can I stand out within a job environment. But this can also bring you to a place where you're like known as a powerhouse within your field. Let's get into this, Virgo. All right, you lovely Virgos, this is happening in your 5th house: creativity, self-expression, joy, children, romance, entrepreneurship, education. So what this can look like is taking control of your creative voice, or even I should have mentioned investing as well. That's the most obvious combination with this. This can look like you're investing a great deal of wealth into the market, or the market is bringing you some wealth here. But also, like I said, you may have some strong creative inspirations that hit you out of nowhere. And you're like, wow, like I feel so inspired. And maybe this creative inspiration or entrepreneurship venture takes you far. whether that be it brings in a really steady income or becomes your main income. That is within the realm of possibility here. Definitely a rising of leadership within those areas. You might find that you have more pushback when it comes to your self-expression and who you are. People just may not be on the same wavelength as you. You see things differently in creative environments or how you express yourself. That's something that can happen. But there's also this shift where you might even stop seeking validation because of this, and you decide that you just want to be your authentic self and you just want to let your hair down, and the things that you don't want to do, you're just not going to do them. In romantic dynamics, this is actually something where it's calling attention to imbalances within those areas. But similar to how I said with the 7th house, this is actually a time period, and for Cancers, I mean, a time period in which you could meet someone who changes how you view romance and love, which can be very revolutionary. From what I've seen, when love themes and Pluto come together, it's either going to be something that is very obsessive and toxica, you know what I mean? But at the same time, there's the other flip side to it, where it can become very intense emotionally in a good way, where you have that safe space to be open to people who are romantic. And if you're just looking to get an itch scratch, this is the time for it. Time for it. Okay, I definitely want to say that here. This can actually look like, turning your passion into something structured, as I said, monetizing a hobby. If you already have it monetized, you gain more momentum in those areas, whether that is financial, whether that's more followers, clients, subscribers, whoever the case may be, backers. That is also something that can happen, more financial support at this time. You start taking ownership of your creativity, and you also start to invest more in what you do during your free time. This can also look like changing how you structure your free time. Pluto kind of reminds me of Saturn, and the fact that people will say if Saturn comes into your 5th house, you don't have any fun, but it's not really true. It's more so what you find to be exciting are usually things that are going to have to do with upskilling, that have to do with investing in your future, that have to do with learning and just being the best possible version of yourself. And also, there's a little bit of a cost-benefit analysis going on there. Pluto's similar in that sense, where it's about revolutionizing things, transforming, leveling up. And so you start doing this cost-benefit analysis on, is this worth my time and energy? Like, do I want to drive 2 hours to go to this place? Do I want to spend $100 at this bar? Do I want to go to this soccer meetup with friends because they want to hang out and do something kind of cutesy and kind of fun, and we play soccer, kickball, some other sport together? Do I want to really do that, or am I just doing that just to be a part of the group? So this is what I'm saying. You start questioning things a little bit more about the things that you do for fun or how you spend your free time. One thing that I've seen about 5th house transits, especially major ones, sometimes they bring about more free time, which can look like unemployment. But hopefully that is not the case. That is happening for you. So I just want to throw that out there because I want to give you the full picture of what can happen here. But definitely rebalancing your priorities of what actually brings you joy. And you start to have more intentional fun, and it's less about I'm following the crowd and I'm not responsible for the itinerary. Pluto in the 5th house wants you to take control of the itinerary, and I would imagine that you are going to do so. And then when I think about your romantic life, as I said, suitors can be very intense, very transformational, very impactful. You could have this very, clandestine whirlwind romance that is going on here that feels like once in a lifetime, and you remember it for the rest of your life, and you're like, wow, like I've never experienced love in that way before. So that is something that can happen here. Obviously, I encourage everyone to practice safe intimacy matters. especially during this time period, because that can lead to a lot of that going on here. Oh, it's my Libras. So if you're just now coming in, we are going through the signs of what is happening as Pluto transits Shravana. We already talked about the history of Pluto and Shravana. We talked about slavery. We talked about the American Revolution. We talked about the U.S. Constitution. We mentioned some themes, and I made some predictions on how I think this is going to play out over the next couple of years here till 2035. Now we're on Libra, and I'm going to hop right into it. Let me know if you have any questions, what your thoughts are so far, and I'm just going to continue along the path. We're almost halfway done. So Libra, this is happening in your fourth house, house of home, family, roots, foundation, your emotional world, and just general your personal life, okay? So this is all about home, family dynamics, and all of that. This is definitely learning some more things about your family. And then at this time, you can even have some changes to your family situation, where you have certain people who are in the home, certain people who are leaving the home. For example, you may have a parent or a grandparent come to live with you at this time because they cannot take care of themselves. Also, like if you live with a certain individual, maybe you live with your siblings, maybe you live with your parents, maybe you live with a roommate, it looks like that is changing at this time. Or heck, maybe you live with a boyfriend, a girlfriend, and you decide that you guys want to buy your own place, get married, etc. Or even if you have a spouse or a husband, or a wife, you guys just might want to move. That's something that could happen here as well. But whatever the case may be, that is changing. I've also found the fourth house to connect heavily to the emotional world. If you are not moving, if there's no changes within the home environment, this looks like an emotional transformative period. What this looks like is maturing. You learn more things about yourself. You are in more control of your emotions. You understand yourself on a higher level. This is also a time period in which you can take on additional responsibilities as well. Though Pluto can represent emotional ups and downs, crisis situations that are happening. And yeah, that can be part of the story when it comes to, going through an emotional crisis or a family crisis or a home crisis. Like, oh my God, our house is on fire. I don't know. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but I don't want to scare you guys. But there can be crisis situations at this time when it comes to the home family situation that is going on here. But I think because of that, it is going to make you more emotionally steady, and you learn how to deal with certain situations more. That can happen for you Libras as well. And this can also be an opportunity to own more property, own your own home, or gain wealth through property. That could be the story here as well. Gaining equity or selling property and just making money off of that. It's all up to you on how you want things to go. But this is just establishing your own sense of control of your own environment. In some case, it can look like distancing yourself from family individuals or dynamics that feel restrictive, or even thoughts and repeating emotions that feel restrictive. I've seen, in my opinion, people have fourth house transits and they kind of let go limiting beliefs more, which can release anxieties. And this is why I say sometimes that fourth house transit can give you an emotional transformation and a new perspective on life. So that's something that can happen here. We also know that this can look like sort of restructuring the home if you do some renovations as well. Discussions around household chores and the financial security of your home and long-term investing, that can be part of the conversation as well. As I said, different things come to light at this period. I'd be shocked if it didn't when it comes to childhood friends, family, whatever. People may shock you about their thoughts, their experiences, their beliefs, their behaviors. You may need to address any underlying issues. There may be pressure to change your family situations. I do see fourth house transits to represent things like gaining family members, like getting married, or moving out on your own and getting roommates or something like that. So these things can happen during this time period. Pluto going through the fourth house is definitely going to want to cause you to sometimes be a little bit more of a stay-at-home body. This is not the most sociable transit when we talk about Pluto going through the fourth house here. So Libras, you might be in a period of just like, I want to go to work, I want to go home. And I'm not saying that's going to be all of 2026 to 2035, but I feel like when you look back, you're going to be like, I just needed my space during this time period. I don't know what was going on, but I just felt like I needed time to myself, and my home environment became that environment of reflection and recovery for me. Ultimately, this can just look like rebuilding a secure foundation, whether that be through your home, whether that be through any sort of housing, whether that be emotionally, whether it be through your family members. These are all within the realms of possibility that is going on here. Also, if you think a little bit more broadly, this can look like certain people getting engaged that you know, whether that's childhood friends or that's family member. And so it's like people who are part of your close-knit circle are expanding at this time. Sometimes Pluto takes things away. It is that planet that does that, but it also gives birth to things. As I said, it connects to just general transformations in life. And so part of that is going through the transformation process of birth here. That's generally what I found for the fourth house transit here. You have a lot of information coming to you about these dynamics of home and family. And I really wouldn't be surprised if you just had this strong desire to just relocate to someplace you just feel more happy and excited about. Now, when we talk about you Scorpios, so Scorpios, this is transiting your third house, the house of communication, mindset, siblings, cousins, aunts, uncles, local environment, information exchange, skills, and it's even seen as a second money house as well because it's second from the second. And just generally what you think and how you think. So what you think and how you think changes. It transforms. It becomes either more structured, more streamlined, or more open to new ideas, or even just feeling as though if you've been in like a victim mindset, this is about taking control of that and no longer feeling disempowered. You feel more empowered. You feel more powerful than ever. This is also about up-leveling any skills that you may be focused on or just trying to build more at this time. And as I said, because this is second from the second, this can look like gaining more financial resources or access to that or getting your money up, during this long time period. Not everyone's going to get their money up during this time period, but it is likely that you will, my lovely Scorpios here. You'll definitely find yourself pushing back against misinformation or manipulation. Social media might feel a little bit daunting or draining to you at this time. You may feel like information is being used as power to control you, and you start to think about that more and the hidden message behind the hidden message behind what people mean to say, or you're not taking words at face value is what I'm trying to say. Dynamics with peers, coworkers, aunts, cousins, whatever, those things may shift and change. You may even feel like there's some communication imbalances here. They might even appear in your life and have some sort of powerful effect. This can happen. Maybe you see them a lot more. Maybe their situation becomes unstable and they're looking for you to have help. Or maybe you're in the position where you need to have help and they help you out. But either way, this is a shift where you become more intentional with your words and how you speak, how you stay silent, and how you communicate certain boundaries within your life. That is something that is going to be there for you. The third house is also the house of bravery. So at this time, this is likely to be an increase of bravery. The things that you may be scared of, you may not be scared of by the end of this transit. You're letting those things go, or even just how you think about things and life. Like, for example, sometimes people feel by the time that they get to 30, they're at some sort of pivotal point in their life and they are this extremely wise, grown person who doesn't have much longer left to live. In fact, 30 is very, very young. And especially if you're somebody who is going to live till 70, you'll look back and say, wow, I was a baby. I didn't know anything. So you start to restructure your thinking about certain topics. I was just giving an idea. You might structure your thinking around that aging aspect and what it means for you. You will feel the need to speak up for yourself at this time, and that is going to allow more respect into your life and push people out your life that doesn't need to be there. Definitely an increase in gossip, news stories, information, but at the same time, you're actually looking towards people who can benefit your life and grow it for the better. Yeah, you may track some underworld shady individuals. I'm not gonna lie. Pluto is a planet that can represent these things, right? People who create their own rules and boundaries. One thing I've seen about people who have those strong Pluto placements is they don't like going by other people's system. They like going by their own system, which can be detrimental to people around them and really cause a lot of pain and animosity. But sometimes it's needed, right? Sometimes revolution is needed, but sometimes it's not. And so you may meet people who are willing to push back against the system in a positive way, but then you also may meet people who just want to do things their own way, and they come across as selfish and misguided. So that can be part of the conversation. You might meet people like that on your daily basis as well. Yeah, this can look like learning more about technology, what opportunities are available to you in terms of up-leveling skill. Yeah, new friendships can come, for sure. New friendships can come, and heck, old relationships can go, especially when we talk about the third house being eighth from the eighth. Third house is another kind of like crisis house. So when I see things happening to the third house, I'm like, yeah, this is kind of some spontaneous moments can be happening, you know, to say the least, with this time period, with this going on in your life. So it can feel like, whoa, you know, this is one thing after the next going on here, which can be good, could be bad, could be good, could be bad. You know, you can have good surprises, you got bad surprises. So I feel like you're going to have both at this time. So I don't want you to get caught up on just things being tragic or something like that. Definitely a shift in how you are doing your day-to-day things in your life. Third house definitely connects to that local commute and the activities you might do on a daily basis, similar to that sixth house feel to it. They're both ruled by Mercury. So this is changing how you're going to spend your time and efforts. There's a lot more mental activity there. And like I said, you're moving beyond the surface level when it comes to analyzing situations and even knowing who you are in yourself. There's going to be a lot of epiphanies about who you are as a person. Anyway, this is definitely going to look like rebalancing settings when it comes to your communication, your voice. You might even publish something at this time, writing, whether that's writing, blogs, social media. You're putting yourself out there, and that can be a huge transformation in your life. I don't think I said this for anybody else, but Shravana can connect to fame. Third house transits where you're talking to people, socializing, all that jazz. Actually, you know, I'll say this. Actually, earth sign placements can create a little bit more fame, but let me throw this in there. Earth and water can create more fame, but because it's going through your third and seventh, if it's going through your third house, or your seventh house, or your 11th house, this can actually bring about more visibility to you. So you could be, you know, the talk of the town. That's what I want to say here. You might also be more selective about who you choose to engage with and who you choose to communicate with. Sagittarius, let's get on to this. We're almost at the 2-hour mark. So that's good that we're almost done, because I was going to say, we got to wrap this up. All right, Sagittarius, this is happening in your second house. So you and the Geminis are getting lucky, right? Because you're doing it's all about the money. It's all about the income, resources, value, self-worth, family, anything to do with things that you possess, anything to do with your family history as well, similar to the fourth house going on there. So what this looks like is you start taking control of your financial income, stability, how you save money, how you spend money, how you invest money, how you collect debt, how you pay down debt. This is definitely empowering yourself in those areas. And so this may actually be a time of bringing about more wealth or financial stability to yourself. Remember, Pluto is connected to that 8th house and that Scorpio feel to it. And so it's a little bit more passive income if you think about it, or gains through another person. But your skill set can take you far. I don't want to diminish your ability to gain income. But if we think about things, like you guys have Scorpio on the 12th house. So that's a very passive house. The 12th house is not like, let's get busy, let's get active. It's the opposite. And so when we think about that, and Pluto connecting to that energy of Scorpio, it's like, this is very much passive income. So I just want to emphasize that. Not showing how you make your money, but it's very much giving that. And I'm not saying you won't have a job during this time period or anything like that, but I think a majority of your wealth may come through those matters. Investing, whether that's in real estate, stock market, whatever the case, there's so many different ways to invest. Buying gold and, I don't know, storing it in a vault, that's technically an investment. But that's something that you might be going through. You may have questions about how much control you actually have over your resources or even your future. There's conversations in the family when it comes to money, when it comes to inheritance, legacy, trust, all of these things. Just a lot of money talk when it comes to your family, whether you're you're leading that conversation or you're a part of that conversation, it's becoming a part of that. There can also be a push towards ownership of your finances rather than relying on some unstable external resources. So like I said, that financial empowerment theme going on here. I will say this, we also have Pluto going through the 2nd house. And I know a lot of people don't interpret things this way, but Pluto, Saturn, and any sort of major planets going through your 2nd house can actually build upon relationships, particularly because I think Pluto and Saturn are very similar to each other in some regard. This can actually be a time period or a window when you get married. And I know it's a large window and you're probably rolling your eyes at me and saying like, yeah, a lot of people I'm sure will get married in this time period. But there are a lot of people who have long-term, I guess, singledom, and they can go 8, 10, 9 years without being in a relationship. And so I just want to say for those people, this can actually look like connecting to someone at this time during this period, just throwing that out there. You may actually be focusing on building ownership. You're likely to create a not only defensive financial position, but you also want to think about where you're going in the future. Remember, Shravana connects to that psychic vision as well. And it really becomes about like having foresight when you're trying to invest in property, real estate, or business. This can also look like adjusting to new financial systems. You know, maybe you start investing in more crypto, maybe you start using an app to track your finances, but you become more aware of the money flows at this time. Also, your values change. How you see beauty, how you see people, how you see money, how you see different things change. For example, I've seen people when they have transit to their 2nd house, maybe there's someone who used to buy a lot of Fashion Nova and now they're looking at the more quality of the fabric, or vice versa. But usually people don't downgrade. They're not usually like, let me go to silk to polyester. But these are the things we're talking about. Maybe it's just like, oh, those things weren't really important to me. It was more about the creativity. It was more about the style. It was more about expressing myself through the clothing. But then it can shift during this time period, and it's just like, I don't even care about that. I just want to be comfortable and feel good. So that's something that's a value change, right? So you're going through actually a lot of value changes during this time period. And maybe you want to be pushed back on that and saying, yeah, it's a long period. A lot of people go through value changes. Not really. Some people, they grow, but they don't grow. But you're going to grow. So I just want you to know that if you find your current setup unfeasible, whether that is within your family dynamics, whether that isn't financially, whether that is with how you just kind of structure your life in general when it comes to the things that you do, you're going to shift it. And what I mean by that is Generally, this might make you a little bit more selective over your time. Remember, Shravana connects to that alienation ship and just kind of pushing away from things that aren't aligned with your values. And so if people are doing things that aren't interesting to you, or if they're inviting you out places and you're just like, I don't want to go to bingo, you just may not go to bingo. Like, this time period is very revolutionary for just like, I'm not going to people please. I'd rather just sit in isolation and be by myself than deal with this, right? That is a feeling that is going on there. Yeah, there could be some definitely shifts in the family dynamics that are happening when we talk about this transit. This can also look like rebalancing of things. Sometimes people reconnect. Sometimes people distance themselves from family members. Sometimes people go through divorce. Sometimes people get married. These are the things that can happen when we look at things going on here. But you're going to make some serious changes ultimately when it comes to your self-esteem, what you are basing that on, how you view yourself. And this can also look like surgery, a transformation of your facial features. Generally, I'll say this, Pluto it's not known for beauty. Don't get me wrong, Pluto aspects can create beautiful people, right? You will have Plutonian people who are very gorgeous, handsome, etc. But Pluto's not necessarily known for the creation of beauty. But one thing it may do is it may sustain sex appeal. Like, I don't know how else to say that, guys. But definitely for sure, there is a magneticism, especially to your face. People will feel a little bit more drawn in by it. They'll feel as though like there's just something about this person's look that really draws me in. And be careful about any mouth surgeries that could go on at this time, or even just like skin surgeries. Maybe you go in and you get some, I don't know, you fly to Korea to get some skincare treatments that they have there, and they have so many. Or you get braces for your teeth, you get teeth whitening, your skin might become more dry, or it might become more oily, or you have to undergo some acne treatment. You see a dermatologist. These are the things that can happen, but ultimately it transforms your facial beauty. I personally think it transforms it for the better, but you know, like some people, they're like, oh, it's like this person is aging over time and they look terrible, blah, blah, blah. I think it brings about a mature, magnetic look. You know, we all age. And so to me, it feels as like this person just has a look to them that I like and find irresistible. And that might be you, Sagittarius. But definitely you're getting serious about your finances. You might hit some financial goals. And also this can bring about great windfalls of money at this time. Think like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, I won the winning ticket type of vibe going on here. Money comes through tax rebates, settlements, inheritance, investments, all the things that we talked about at this time. And you're changing directions that are going to honestly maybe change your financial ceiling or tax bracket. I don't know what is going on here. One second. My script, it is missing, guys. This is very frustrating for me. Maybe I accidentally deleted it. Give me 1 second, but we'll get right to it. I can just look at the chart. Let me pull that up because I don't want you Capricorns to have to suffer through things. I'll pull up the natal chart just in case, but I do want to see if I can find the script too, but we got to have our backup just in case things go south. Let me find it. 1 second. If you guys are coming in, there is some errors on my end. Your girl has lost her script a little bit and she's trying to find it. So I know I wrote it and then I copied and pasted it into my main folder. So that is a little bit irritating. Little bit irritating, just a little bit. Okay, I think I found it. All right, guys. Here we go. Sorry, Capricorns. Sorry to keep you waiting. I know this happens to you guys a lot. I know it does. I know it does. What is happening? Now it's freezing. This is so frustrating. All right. Oh, I'm gonna go crazy. Sorry, guys. Sorry for all the technical difficulties. This is what happens when you write a script during Mercury retrograde. So anyway, as I was talking about Capricorn, this is going to be happening in your first house. You guys are the star of the shows here. This is your identity. This is your appearance. This is your personal direction, your sense of autonomy. It just connects to all different aspects of your life when we talk about the first house, because it connects to you. And so one thing that is going to happen is more than likely you're going to start to assert yourself more and you're going to speak up. There is a possibility that you become this trendsetter. You become somebody who's known as a fireball, as somebody who is a game changer within your community, within the world, whatever the case may be. But you might carry that reputation on your back here. This can also represent a transformation within your own physical appearance. We would be remiss not to say so. This can look like losing weight, gaining weight, changing your style, changing your hair, getting any surgeries, similar to Sagittarius going on there. But this can definitely just represent having that change and shift in your appearance that is going on. This is 100% about empowering yourself during this period. I've seen people who've had Pluto transit the first house, and I'm not gonna lie, it's not easy. We know Pluto connects to all of these traumatic underworld situations, a lot of things that can be brutal or tough or emotionally turbulent. But by the end of the transit, what people have said when it comes to Pluto transiting their first house is they come out on the other side stronger than ever. It's like a lot harder to rattle them, and they have a sense of inner strength and bravery about them. And lastly, what I was talking about with the appearance, the way that they used to look, they no longer look anymore. Generally, I mean, yeah, we all age, but I'm talking about like they might go from somebody who is a size 16 to a size 2. Like that's something that can happen there. I don't know men's sizes, so I can't really throw that in there, but you know, maybe a size, I think 40, maybe let's say 32, you know, in waist. I think that's a man size. But these are the things that can happen. You completely transform how you look at this time. This is definitely going to put you in some whirlwind situations, bring a lot of responsibilities onto you. You're going to have to deal with some unfairness and injustice in your life. But trust me when I say this transit will build that confidence within you. I'm not going to say for every aspect in your life, but you get known for being somebody who's very confident, who stands their ground, who's not afraid to go against the grain here with Pluto in the first house. Girl, y'all don't give a damn. Like, like I'm just saying, it's just very much like you are maintaining your identity in order to maintain your peace. It's very like, I'm not compromising on myself. I've seen it time and time again with Pluto in the first house here. So this can look like the personal restructuring of your life direction. As I said before, things that are not aligning with you, you may drop. And it's actually interesting here because Pluto in the first house, you may have this plan for yourself, but it's going to, you're going to realize just how little control you have when you talk about Pluto being in the first house. You become this person who people are paying attention to. People care what you have to say. People listen and lean into what thoughts are coming out of your head and what you represent. And you might even shift how you communicate yourself. Pluto is a little bit more of a direct planet, weirdly enough. Don't get me wrong, sometimes they're like, let's speak in code, or I'm going to be a little bit more subtle. But what I have found is generally people who have strong Pluto aspects are a lot easy to read. And I think it goes into the vulnerability aspect of Pluto. They kind of wear their hearts on their sleeve a lot, or they're more open about their situations in life. Anyway, this may cause you to feel pressure to change, to evolve, to redefine yourself in all of the ways that we just talked about. Here, you're stepping into a season of winter. I'm not going to lie, but winter is all about refining until you blossom in the spring. And there's going to be some high highs and some low lows. Pluto going through the first house brings some wild experiences. But whatever is happening here is setting the foundations for your new character that is developing, and you're entering this new stage in your life. You're probably one of those people, and this is a terrible example, but I really cannot think of anything else off the top of my head, who's just like, I used to gangbang, now I'm a pastor, you know what I mean? So it's like people will look at you and they'll say, wow, like you have changed so much. Like it will feel that drastic by the end of this transit. Your identity completely shifts within the public sphere and the public eye. Now, if you're thinking about love and relationships as this aspects the seventh house, this doesn't necessarily say that you'll connect to people in that regard, but you'll definitely meet some characters who, oh, man, they're just extreme. I mean, I don't know how else to explain it, guys. You know when somebody's a character, you know when somebody's kind of normal, etc. every day. Pluto going in the first house is bringing you the odd balls, you know, like I'm not gonna lie, but it can also bring about people who are incredible. And you just have those experiences. So that's something that can happen there. All right, on to Aquarius, and sorry for the delay, guys. This is what happens. I time and time again, I know what to do and what not to do during a Mercury retrograde, and still, I don't listen. I don't listen to myself. We have Pluto and Shravana transiting your 12th house here. So this is like subconscious isolation, being by yourself, foreign lands, foreign travels, charities, hospitalization, timing of resting. Yeah, 12th house is very healing in its sense. It's also a house of reflection and just thinking deeply about your life, yourself, how we're all connected, etc., and compassion for others. And so the way you view yourself and maybe even your relationship to what you can do for others changes at this time, whether that be that you are setting different boundaries about how compassionate and how giving you want to be, or you are deciding that maybe you haven't been as compassionate, as giving, and now you want to step into that world and into that light, and you're just like, I have to give back more, I have to do more. There could also be some patterns that have subconsciously controlled you. 12th house is the house of addictions and self-undoing. There's lots of different addictions out there. Some people are addicted to being within relationships. Some people are addicted to food. Some people are addicted to social media. And so at this time period, you're actually looking into raising awareness of that and maybe even letting go of those patterns and addictions within your life. You're trying to pull back from that. Also, because 12th house is very isolating, Shravana is very isolating, Pluto is representing the underworld. This is not exactly visibility during this time period. Don't get me wrong, there's going to be other transits that are going on in this time period that can bring visibility in and out, but ultimately this is a lot of time to yourself, or even time within an intimate environment with another person, because it is the house of bed pleasures and things like that, and just the house of just sexuality and all of that jazz. So this could be just like, I don't want to do nothing but that, you know. But anyway, you're definitely reassessing where you pour in your time, where you pour in your energy, where you pour in your thoughts, what you think of yourself at this time, because this is the house of self-conscious. And so you're thinking about how you can move into a different direction in restructuring in that manner. You might even decide to visit some institutions or have support for any health matters, or whether that's physical or mental. That can happen during this time period. You're likely to have these private realizations about who you are, what you want to do, where you see yourself at the end of your life, what legacy you want to lead. Think about Shravana, it does connect very much so to legacy. And I think I should have said this, like, this is a time in which a lot of us will be pulled and called towards our destinies. Meaning, you may want to push in one direction, but that Shravana feel is going to say, sorry, you belong here actually. And so you may start to actually connect to that path that the universe wants you to go on more, and you start connecting dots and understanding things on a deeper level. So that is part of the story here. This is very transformation internally. Lastly, we want to talk about, you know, rebalancing work-life balance here. That's something that's like looking to heal from that. 12th house doesn't want to work. I'm just saying, it doesn't want to work. And but they may end up working hard, but they don't want to work. And so this is about creating a space of peace and quiet for yourself, and pulling away from environments that just feel like heavy or toxic, or just I'm grinding away and I have to do the daily grind. Pluto in the 12th house is like, please get away from me. Don't get me wrong, you may struggle with sleep during this time period. Heck, you may even find yourself working hard up into the night during this time period. But ultimately, by the end of this transit, you're going to try to rebalance that so that you have more space for yourself to let go, to feel less pressure. And so that's something that you want to think about this time. Also, this could go either way, where it puts restrictions on travel, or you actually end up living in a different country here. When we talk about this, Aquarius, I'd be surprised if you just didn't end up living in a different country or a different state, or moving across country. Those are the things that can happen for you, but you're definitely not taking things at surface value. You're going behind the scenes. You might even find yourself working behind the scenes at this time. That's part of the story when we talk about Pluto and Shravana. And I know we talked about just a lot of hidden enemies, or not hidden enemies, hidden aspects. Hidden enemies becomes part of that story. You know what's actually funny about the 12th house is, though it's a place of hidden enemies and people who kind of like stab each other behind their back, what I have found with 12th house, Pisces, Neptune, the worst enemy is always themselves, because they come from this place where they might be self-doubting, they might be punishing themselves, they might be in a space where they're talking to themselves negatively. And once they get out of it, it's almost as if the people who were set out to destroy them, they don't matter anymore. So you might have a moment like that. It reveals those hidden enemies, but also reveals where you might feel insecure about yourself, and where you need to grow, and where you need to let go of self-doubt. Pisces, last but not least. And if you have any questions, guys, feel free to come in and ask those questions. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap it up as soon as Pisces is done, because we've been here 2 hours and almost 30 minutes. Partially a little bit of editing, because I didn't And my script in the same place. But I found it, so. But let's get into this. We don't want to waste your time here, Pisces. So Pisces, this is transiting your 11th house, another house of having to do with windfalls, big gains, network circles, friends, long-term goals. I was going to say relationship, long-term goals, collective vision, social circles, networking. All of that could be happening at this time. You are looking to expand your network and probably expand it into a network of professionals or a network of people who are successful, well off. These are the things that are coming for you. You're seen as somebody who's looking for to be a part of this revolution of leadership. You guys are likely to be play a huge part of this cultural shift that is going on here, and push backing against any unfairness and any, inequalities when it comes to who has access to capital or gains, or even certain information can be a part of that story. I think this is also being aware of certain group dynamics a lot more and who holds influence, and that can apply for any sort of environment. You are finding people who align with your visions. You're reaching out to people who align with your goals, who can possibly give advice. You're trying to build your network, and you might even be trying to build your presence. Remember how I talked about how I can definitely see this sort of Fiverr, Upwork, YouTube combination? I can definitely see that for you guys, particularly at Pisces, because it's almost as if you are trying to revolutionize your life through either social media or those larger networks, and you're trying to make yourself more visible to have those gains in your life. So you're building more networks, and you're also looking to achieve those goals. And I think when I think about Pluto being in the 11th house, that is about being able to achieve large goals, particularly if they are related to finances or even intimacy and emotional upheavals. Definitely, I believe your friend circle is going to change. As I said, Pluto's not necessarily known as somebody who is a social butterfly. In fact, they're somebody who generally has limited friends when I think about the Pluto people. In fact, if I think about the Pluto people I've met, like Pluto in the ascendant, Pluto in the sun and moon, they usually have like one or two friends. And so for me, I'm not saying you're just going to have one or two friends during this time period, but you're definitely going to be about selective of who you keep close to you. This is not letting everyone in. You may have a larger network and people you were friendly with, acquaintances, all of that jazz, but close friends, I highly doubt that you're going to be the life of the party. Definitely can represent having strong supporters if you have clients, if you have people who are buying things from you or that you interact with in some way during a work capacity, like customers, etc. That could be changing at this time. And you're setting this foundation when it comes to who you want to be surrounded by, who you want, how you want to gain certain things. And also the 11th house, as I said, connects to goals. What I have seen here is, number one, you're doing anything possible to reach your goals. Pluto is a very ambitious planet. It may not be very sociable, but it's ambitious. And also, what I've seen it do is maybe even restructure your goals or shift your goals, or even put you in a place where you're constantly transforming and letting certain goals go or fall to the wayside and taking on different goals. It's actually interesting because Pluto being known as this underworld god, you actually might be somebody who is seen as being a little bit unusual and particular when it comes to what goals you have set for yourself. Meaning, I don't think you have lined up the average goals, right? This is not white picket fence family. Not saying that you don't want those things, but you may have your own spin on it. That's a little bit different from the normal discussions and what we think about marriage, family, kids, etc. It's just different for you guys. So I don't know. Let me know below, Pisces, as to how you're viewing things. But either way, your goals change. You're looking to hit those big goals. You're looking to live your life the way you want to live it. And I already said that there is potential for financial upheavals, but then there's also the sense of like needing to have faith. 11th house also connects to investments in property, especially the acquiring of real estate. So I wouldn't be surprised if you acquired some real estate at this time. If you also had to go through these down markets and up markets, and you had to deal with the relying on taking the emotions out of investments, that's something that you might do here. I generally just feel like the 11th house is just a place of making sure your dreams come true. And I really feel like during this time period, maybe you guys, Pisces, have felt like you didn't have as many opportunities before to hit these big goals. And now it feels as if you're having more and more opportunities to make these dreams come into fruition. Definitely outgrowing certain friendships or groups or even identities of how you see yourself and how you group yourself. For example, you know how people group themselves as an Apple user or an Android user? You might go from an Apple user to an Android. And this is what I mean, like how you mentally group yourself. You're just like, oh, I'm an Apple user, I'm not like an Android user. Now, over this time period, you become an Android user. I'm just saying. That is part of the thing that is going on here. But yeah, you want to grow, you want to collaborate, you want to build financial wealth. There's more than likely going to be some windfalls at this time, and maybe even some inheritance that happened during this time period as well for you, that are going to change the course of your life, change your friendships, change how you possibly do business, change your social media presence if you have one, and even change who you decide to align yourself with or how you decide to group yourself. So that is what I have for you, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed this video when it comes to Pluto and Shravana. I'm going to wish you all the best. I don't see any questions here. And I will see you all on Thursday, tomorrow, for the new reading. And also I'm going live, I believe, Friday and Saturday. Friday at 9 p.m. and Saturday at noon if you want to ask me questions about tarot or astrology related to, you know, your own personal charts. We go live during those time periods. And that's the time we're going to be live this week. And I look forward to seeing you then. You're going to see me 3 times this week, 4 times if you count the videos that will be on the channel. And we're going to talk about the weekly collective, more than likely on Friday, just because it's just good timing when it comes to, for me on a personal back end, especially when it comes to editing shorts. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Pluto and Shravana is definitely going to be a heck of a ride. But have faith that things will work out in the end if you're going through tough times, or if it's hard for you to see the light at the end of the tunnel and it just feels like it's going on and on and on. That's the Shravana feel. So I will see you guys next time.